We have covered many stories on Hollywood stars who are afraid of aging because of how Hollywood treated these women. But none to me is more tragic than the story of Pier Angeli. She was so afraid of turning 40 that she took her own life at the age of 39 to escape the horror of her alleged fleeting beauty and fleeting fame. This sounds extreme, right? And rather sad. But Pier Angeli got her start in the industry as a child actress with a stage mom willing to do anything to make her daughter famous. Pier Angeli mastered the art of people-pleasing before she was 18. She allowed everyone around her to control her, from her mom to the studios and down to her jealous husbands. Her whole sense of self-worth was wrapped around her ability to make money from movies and her beauty. Exposed to older, dangerous men inside the studio lots of Hollywood, her self-esteem stood no chance. Her innocence was doomed from the start. In today's video, we will highlight the triumphant highs and the tragic lows of the very short life of Pier Angeli. We will also talk about the horror of aging in Hollywood and the drastic measures women has had to take in order to survive in such a shallow industry. And we also must talk about how her death exposed this dark side of Hollywood and ageism in beauty. But first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Korean Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars in history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. Let's start first from the beginning, which is her childhood. Born Anna Maria Pier Angeli on June 19, 1932, in the picturesque landscape of Italy, Pier and her fraternal twin sister Marisa initially basked in the comforts of a sheltered middle-class childhood, but their charmed existence crumbled drastically when World War II erupted. The relentless pounding of German bombs over Rome crushed their safe haven, thrusting Pier from a sheltered life into the harrowing depths of survival. As chaos continued, her parents resorted to perilous measures just to keep their starving family fed, turning their home into a battleground of fear and uncertainty. Sleepless nights became Pierre's new reality as she lay awake, gripped by the terror of not knowing if her parents would return home. The emotional scars from her childhood trauma ran deep, leaving her haunted long after the war ended, and only grew darker as she aged. During the war, Pier was just a 10-year-old child when the Nazis claimed Rome, thrusting her into a world of shortages and bomb shelters. The chaos left its mark on her psyche, leading her to later declare, "What was in the world I didn't want to know." "The war stole my childhood," Pier lamented. "I felt like I was robbed of those innocent years and didn't want to grow up." But you can't escape your problems forever. Acknowledging that is a significant step towards maturity, and growing up can be bearable if you take it at a normal pace, end quote. Pier was raised in a household steeped in strict Catholic values, but her fate took a wild turn one fateful day. A chance encounter with the director changed everything. Spotting the 16-year-old beauty in Rome, he boldly asked, "I need a face like yours. How would you feel about being in movies?" End quote. Just one glimpse of Pierre's enchanting visage sealed the deal. And what a face it was. She is gorgeous. This would be just the first of many men she would captivate with her stunning looks. Even in the glitzy realm of Hollywood, Pier was a knockout. Angeli was fluent in Italian and English and near fluent in French. Standing at just under 5 feet with delicate features, she was really short, just 5 feet. With delicate features and wide, innocent eyes, she radiated an angelic aura that left men utterly defenseless. She had a childlike, youthful innocence about her that made men want to protect her and just tower over her, but they thought they were protecting her, but that's not really what they were doing. But despite her breathtaking beauty and the allure of fame, Pier felt a pang of reluctance. But her mother, Enrichetta, however, was quick to recognize this golden opportunity and leaped at it. To Enrichetta, Pier was more than just a daughter. She was the embodiment of her own unrealized dreams. Her mother always wanted to be a star herself and have her name in flashing lights. Now she had the chance to live through her beautiful daughter. and Ranchetta morphed into an overbearing stage mom, pushing Pierre into a world she was unsure of. Her mother didn't just stop at Pierre. She also had her fraternal twin sister Marisa join the party also. Twin sisters Pierre and Marisa both skyrocketed to fame as actresses, but their shared spotlight was anything but harmonious. Childhood squabbles morphed into bitter rivalries as adults, with Marisa seething with jealousy over Pierre's meteoric rise to stardom. While Pierre seemed to effortlessly snag roles and suitors, Marisa found herself struggling to keep up, leading to fierce competition between the two because their mother was always pinning them against each other, pushing Marisa to get jobs too, get gigs too. So it became a little rift between them. However, Pierre's glamorous success came with a hefty price. Pierre and her mother and Ranchetta were overjoyed when she landed a coveted 5-year contract with MGM, believing it was the golden ticket to Hollywood paradise. Little did they know they had unwittingly signed a pact with the devil. That contract stripped them of control over Pierre's daily life and even dictated every aspect of her appearance, handing her over to the ruthless machine of the movie studio. They told her how to dress, how to talk with speech classes, how to style her hair, how to eat, and basically every little detail of her day-to-day. At first, she was grateful and happy, but over time, it became a source of anxiety for her. She had absolutely no freedom. Every second of the day was on a schedule and time clock. Even her free time was allocated for. Can you imagine? On the surface, Pier Angeli was the picture of a Hollywood dream, rich, famous, young, stunning, and pursued by dashing suitors. Yet beneath all the glitz lay a suffocating reality, and Ranchetta's iron grip on Pierre's life was relentless. She forbade her daughter from stepping out without a chaperone and imposed an early curfew. Meanwhile, she kept a tight hold on Pierre's earnings, leaving little for the young star. So she was controlled by the studios during the day and controlled by her mother during the evening. Then came the morning that shattered everything. While on set to film a scene where her character died, Pierre received catastrophic news. Her father, Luigi, had suffered a fatal stroke at just 44 years old. The loss devastated this daddy's little girl because she was truly daddy's little girl, leaving her heartbroken. But in a shocking twist, rather than crumbling under the weight of her grief, Pierre returned to work mere hours after the news broke. The callousness of her actions stunned everyone around her. How could she be so seemingly heartless? The truth was, Pierre was barely holding it together, masking her anguish behind a professional facade to finish the film. Many of you guys know by now that Hollywood saw time as money. There was immense pressure for the show to keep going no matter what you had going on. In the golden age of Hollywood, you didn't have time to grieve. The show must always go on or you will be replaced. Pier Angeli felt a strong sense of guilt if she allowed her emotions to cause the studios to lose money, so she finished her workday and went home to grieve in private. Amidst all this turmoil, Pier had a soft spot for animals, especially her beloved dog, Baccio, but fate dealt her another cruel blow when she had to leave Baccio behind to fulfill her work commitments, completely unaware that she would never see her furry friend again. Shortly after her father Luigi's death, tragedy struck again when a truck tragically ran over little Baccio, claiming his life. Pierre spiraled into a deep depression, unable to eat for days and consumed by relentless tears. This for her was the final straw and the beginning of her history with depression. The aftermath of these dual tragedies left Pierre reeling, and the road to recovery was long, yet this would not be the last time life would deal her devastating blows. In fact, she faced challenges that would leave scars so deep she would never fully heal. On the set of the story of Three Loves, the air crackled with electricity as Pier Angeli and her co-star, the dashing Kirk Douglas, ignited a passionate affair. Their intense romance quickly spiraled into a secret engagement, with Pierre just 21 and Kirk a seasoned 37, ignoring the age gap and disapproval from everyone around her, especially her overbearing mother. Pierre was head over heels. Who could resist the allure of a famous movie star with smoldering good looks and a magnetic charm? But beneath his suave exterior laid a man with darker motives. Pierre was still a young woman, barely out of her teens, and thanks to her mother's strict control, she was astonishingly naive and clueless, an anomaly in the scandalous world of Hollywood. In stark contrast, Kirk was a divorcee with a child full of experience. To him, Pierre was nothing more than, as he stated verbatim, and I quote, "a child I could mold into the image I wanted," end quote. He would make comments on how submissive and obedient Pier Angeli was and how he liked them young enough to turn into his dream woman. Angeli, being the people pleaser that she was groomed to be, saw nothing wrong or alarming about this. As their whirlwind romance unfolded, it became clear that love was not the only spark flying in the air. Angeli was getting a lot of attention from men in the industry, and her youthful, naive nature was alluring. She found it hard to resist the constant temptations she would encounter, men wanting to give her the world and promising to make all her dreams come true. She was so sheltered by her controlling mom that her mother never taught her to be cautious when dating. Pierre now found herself cheating on Kirk, while Kirk thought he had a good little, moldable, young wife to be waiting for him at home. Angeli was living her best life. But don't feel too bad for Kirk just yet. Kirk did sense something was off. His fiancée was acting strangely. In a bid to reassure himself, he decided to surprise Pierre with an unannounced visit. Arriving at her place, he was greeted with a sight that put him at ease. Pierre proudly displayed their romantic photos. But little did he know, just moments before his arrival, she had frantically hidden snapshots of her summer fling with a younger Italian boy. The betrayal, it turned out, was a two-way street. Kirk himself had been juggling multiple affairs behind Pierre's back during their engagement. Their relationship was doomed from the start. They were worlds apart, spent too much time away from each other, and lacked the approval of Pierre's controlling mother. When Kirk attempted to voice his worries, Pierre, feeling cornered, tossed back the engagement ring, shattering the illusion of their fairy tale romance. Kirk learned really quickly that just because she was young didn't mean she was going to be his doormat. If sparks flew between Pier Angeli and Kirk Douglas, then her connections with James Dean ignited a full-blown wildfire. Their paths crossed on neighboring movie sets, and once again, opposites attract. But James was a far cry from Kirk. He was thrilling, wild, and full of chaos, while Pierre exuded calmness and innocence. At this stage, James was just a rising star making his debut in Hollywood. Pierre loved the idea of dating a bad boy to contrast her good girl innocent image. To Pierre's mother, though, and Ranchetta, James Dean was a nightmare. Her objections went far beyond his lack of Catholic faith. He was dirty, unkempt, a heavy drinker, and a complete mess, a total disaster in Ranchetta's eyes. The last thing she wanted was for Pierre to fall for someone who encouraged her to defy her strict upbringing. And I did a video for James Dean also. It was just recently his birthday. I'll put it in the end cards for you guys to check out. But yeah, James Dean did have a reputation. Though he was handsome, he did not keep himself up, and he had really bad hygiene. All his co-stars would comment on that. Even he would make comments on it. Like, he didn't really care. So the mom was like, girl, what are you seeing in him? But he was still a heartthrob to his generation. So a lot of women overlooked that. And he was also a Hollywood kept boy. So he was a boy toy for a lot of gay men in Hollywood, and gay for pay, basically. And they took advantage of that. They took advantage of him a lot. His story is really, really interesting if you're interested in checking that out. But one day, Ranchetta reached her breaking point and exploded. When salacious rumors began swirling about Pierre spending unsupervised time with James, whispers that they were lovers, the lid blew off her simmering rage. And the worst part, the rumors were completely true. In a fit of rage, she stormed into Warner Bros. Headquarters and marched straight to Jack Warner's office, unleashing her wrath. She demanded that the powerful mogul keep her rebellious daughter away from the troublemaker. Surprisingly, he agreed. Now, it wasn't just Ranchetta who wanted the romance to end. The entire movie studio was weighing in. This was a real-life Romeo and Juliet scenario, complete with all the drama and a tragic twist. Thanks to Ranchetta's iron grip, Pierre faced unimaginable obstacles. She was practically imprisoned in her own home. The studio heads watched her every move and wouldn't even let her use the bathroom on her own. Mind you, she was like 22 years old and recently engaged with Kirk Douglas. Still, the young lovers were determined to keep their passion alive. With the help of Hollywood friends acting as secret matchmakers, they orchestrated clandestine meetings, exchanged heartfelt letters, and whispered sweet nothings over the phone. Legend has it that Elia Kazan, the director of East of Eden, once overheard the couple having loud sex in Dean's dressing room. James was everything Pierre was not, and that was precisely what drew her to him. But as time went on, their stark differences became impossible to ignore. Pierre dreamed of marriage, while James, haunted by his insecurities and fear of commitment, had other ideas. The weight of his demons ultimately drove them apart. In a final showdown, Enranchetta forced Pierre to make an impossible choice: James or everything else she held dear. The ultimatum was clear: choose James and she would lose her family, her career, and her home. In the end, Pierre made the heart-wrenching decision. She chose to walk away from James, breaking both their hearts in the process, leaving scars that would never fully heal. Heartbroken but not defeated, Pier Angeli swiftly found a new love in singer Vic Damone, who became her rebound and shortly after her husband in 1954. This relationship, much like her previous ones, was a whirlwind romance, but at least this time she made it to the altar. However, as she strolled down the aisle towards her future, she might have been hiding a scandalous secret. The saga of Pier Angeli and James Dean continues to captivate Hollywood fans, and for good reason. The chemistry between them was electric, and they just couldn't seem to stay away from one another. Even after their breakup, whispers circulated that the two were still meeting in secret, but their final rendezvous took a dark turn, and it happened just days before Pierre's wedding. Rumors has it that one of James' confessions revealed a disastrous encounter with Pierre just before she was set to marry. Whatever words were exchanged between them turned ugly, culminating in a shocking confrontation where James physically beat her. The romance between them might have been legendary, but it also had its nightmarish moments. They both were young and hot-headed, but James did deny this, and Angeli never made any comments on it. On Pierre's wedding day, James Dean lived up to his infamous bad boy reputation by creating a scene. He pulled up to the venue on his motorcycle, lurking outside as the ceremony unfolded. But that wasn't enough for him. During the nuptials, he revved the engine loudly, drowning out the vows. Though James vehemently denied causing the ruckus, saying, "I would never do something so foolish," multiple guests stated that they witnessed him do this at the wedding. Like, "We saw you in 4K, my guy." This chaotic entrance was just the beginning of Pierre's tumultuous marriage to Vic. From the get-go, Vic asserted his dominance in their relationship, making it clear he wanted to control everything and everyone around him. He pressured Pierre into chopping off her beautiful hair, something she was hesitant about, knowing it wouldn't suit her. Yet, eager to please him, she complied. She also would buy all her clothes and even was particular about the perfume she should wear. He was adamant about her remaining and looking like the woman he fell in love with by any means necessary, and for a time it worked. Pierre was a natural flirt, and her radiant beauty drew the admiration of countless men. But Vic's jealousy was a ticking time bomb. His paranoia spiraled out of control, leading him to impose ridiculous rules. When they went out, he forbade her from looking up from her plate. Terrified she might notice the many admirers vying for her attention, she could only eat with her head down, and she wasn't allowed to make eye contact with any man whatsoever. He spoke on her behalf and made sure no one had access to her. He even refused to watch her films because of the male co-stars seeing Pierre's success and beauty as a double-edged sword that threatened his fragile ego. When they were apart, and they often were, Vic's jealousy drove him to extreme measures, even going as far as to have her followed. He would do random visits to the studio lots and wanted to know every single detail of her day. There was no escaping his suffocating need for control. Then on September 30th, 1955, Pierre received a phone call that shattered her world. James Dean had died in a horrific car accident at just 24 years old. Her reaction, however, raised eyebrows. She didn't shed a single tear. Was she truly that unbothered? Not at all. Behind her calm exterior laid a deeply wounded young woman who had never really moved on from her one true love. But with a jealous husband, you can imagine how bad it would be for her at home if she showed any grief. She had to grieve in private, and once again, like her dad, pretended everything was okay when her husband was around. Can you imagine? She couldn't even grieve properly when her dad died because of work, and now the love of her life, James Dean, she couldn't grieve that because her husband might have just knocked her head off her neck if he saw her grieving for an ex, right? After James' tragic death, a shocking revelation came to light in his home. He had filled out wedding paperwork with Pierre's name. James Dean wasn't just another fling for Pierre. He was her true love. She confessed, "He is the only man I ever loved deeply as a woman should love a man," end quote. Even as she moved on to other relationships and marriages, there was only one James. Pierre was never able to shake the heartbreak of their separation or his untimely passing. Desperately, she sought that same kind of love again and again, only to find herself in a string of doomed romances, forever chasing a ghost. To make matters worse, she got pregnant around this time and was still working. It took its toll on her, but the worst was yet to happen. What was supposed to be a routine plane ride turned into a month-long nightmare for Pier Angeli. What began as a smooth journey quickly transformed into the worst flight in the world. When the aircraft hit severe turbulence, the sudden jolt sent the pregnant Angeli crashing against the ceiling, resulting in horrific injuries, cuts, bruises, and a shocking amount of blood. But the horror didn't end there. It escalated when she rushed to the hospital. X-rays revealed the devastating news. She had fractured her pelvis. The doctors were grim about her chances of carrying her baby to term. Faced with the harrowing possibility of losing her firstborn, Pierre was willing to endure anything to ensure the baby's survival. This included a hellish prescription of absolute stillness, no movement whatsoever. For an entire month, the restless actress was confined to her bed, stuck with a controlling husband, a torturous existence for someone as vibrant as Pierre. Miraculously, both she and the baby made it through, but her marriage, that was a different story. Jealousy wasn't the only poison in Pierre and Vic's relationship. The couple's demanding careers kept them miles apart, leading to extended periods of separation. They missed out on countless milestones and holidays as a family, and during one of the worst moments of Pierre's life, Vic was nowhere to be found. The tabloids buzzed with excitement when Pierre announced she was expecting her second child. Yet just 3 weeks later, tragedy struck. Pierre lost a baby. To add insult to injury, both her husband and her mother, the two people she needed most, were away at the time, leaving her utterly alone in her grief. The whirlwind romance between Pier Angeli and Vic exploded into a very public and bitter custody battle, more dramatic than anything Pierre had ever portrayed on screen. In the courtroom, she broke down in tears, revealing the dark underbelly of their marriage. Vic's jealousy, harassment, financial troubles, and his controlling nature. The judge believed her, granting her custody of their son and alimony. Devastated by her divorce, Pierre sought a way out of the Hollywood scene. She decided to relocate to England because Hollywood was now coming for her. There was a lot of scandal. She was just she went to England. But Vic was having none of it. Though Pierre had primary custody of their son, Perry, Vic was entitled to Sunday visits. This move would disrupt their arrangement, and he quickly sprang into action. With his lawyer by his side, he took Pierre back to court, and this time the judge sided with Vic, issuing a restraining order that prevented her from taking their son out of the country. But Pierre was not one to back down easily. Defying the court's orders, she took Perry abroad anyway. This act of rebellion led to an arrest warrant and a court summons, which she bluntly refused to attend. Thanks to her mother's support and some damaging publicity against Vic, Pierre managed to emerge victorious. But Vic lost this round, but he wasn't finished yet. Vic struck back, targeting Pierre's reputation with ruthless precision. He leaked to the media that she had threatened to cut her wrists, claiming that rumors of him getting remarried sent her spiraling into despair. In a shocking move, he even sent police to her home to do a wellness check on her. When the officers arrived, they found Pierre perfectly fine, but the damage was already done to her reputation. From that moment on, Pier Angeli was branded as hysterical and unstable, a label that would haunt her and further tarnish her already dwindling career, because now everyone believed it and started seeing her as cuckoo crazy, right? And distancing themselves from her. Even Pier Angeli's mesmerizing beauty couldn't shield her from the cruel fate that Hollywood reserved for aging actresses. As her star faded, she found herself relegated to bland, forgettable roles that failed to showcase her true talents. In her personal life, things were just as bleak. Desperate to secure jobs and attract dubious lovers, she shocked friends and family by embracing a scandalous persona, convinced that composer Armando Trovajoli was her knight in shining armor. Despite her history of failed relationships, she assured her worried loved ones that this older man would finally bring her the stability and peace that eluded her in the past. Just 6 months after meeting, they tied the knot. But it didn't take long for Pierre to realize she had simply swapped one miserable marriage for another. Armando was not just jealous, he was possessive and controlling of his younger, more flirtatious wife. She just keep picking the wrong ones, huh? He was a master at being hot and cold, giving her love one minute and then being really cold, neglecting her the next. Pierre may have had the looks, but her love life felt like a never-ending nightmare. As a seasoned Hollywood star, she was no stranger to gossip, no matter how outrageous it might be. So a journalist came up to her and was like, "Hey, I heard you're getting a divorce." She brushed it off like, "That's a rumor." She couldn't even believe it herself. Like, why would you even say something like that? But little did she know, it was the first she heard of it because it was true. They were getting a divorce. Armando had already told the media about his plans to divorce her before even speaking to her, so she found out from the media. To make matters worse, Pierre lost custody of her children to her own mother. Though she adored her kids, her tumultuous career and chaotic lifestyle put their welfare in jeopardy, and at this time it was rumored that she was already experimenting with substances and drinking a lot and heavy depression and just, wasn't really putting her best foot forward, So her mother, Enrichetta, sensing danger, petitioned for custody, and Pierre, heartbroken yet desperate to protect her children, ultimately agreed to the arrangement. In a heartbreaking turn, she had to sacrifice her own happiness for their safety. After that, her encounters with her kids became rare as her life spiraled further out of control. This woman just kept letting everyone control her. Her mother thought she couldn't be a good mother and just took her kids from her. Why didn't she fight back, you might ask? Well, letting others control her was all she ever knew. But unfortunately, taking her kids from her was definitely the last straw. It was a catalyst in her depression. This was Pierre's rock bottom. She had become a shadow of her former self, broke, physically unwell, and drowning in depression. She turned to pills and alcohol to numb the pain. She also began to age more rapidly than she should have, which made a lot of people make fun of her. Like, what happened to this youthful beauty? How the tabloids can be. And after 2 divorces, a shattered engagement, and losing her soulmate and her children, she felt trapped in a relentless cycle of heartbreak. Desperate for relief, she asked her doctor for medication to help her cope. It would prove to be a fatal choice. Determined to reclaim her life, Pierre sought help, but the medication that was meant to lift her spirits instead led to her untimely demise. On September 10th, 1971, a friend found her lifeless body in her home, the same month as James Dean, because they both died in September, the victim of an overdose at just 39 years young. Even now, myths surrounding her tragic end continue to circulate, leaving an air of mystery around the life of the once glorious star. The speculation surrounding Pier Angeli's death continues to swirl, with many convinced that she deliberately overdosed on medication. After all, her life was in shambles, and she had a deep-seated fear of aging, especially the big 40. Those close to her revealed that she was absolutely terrified of hitting that milestone, and tragically she passed away just shy of it at the age of 39. Yet not everyone agrees with this grim narrative. Friends and confidants insist that in the days leading up to her death, Pierre was not wallowing in despair, but was instead filled with hope and excitement about what the future held. But we now know that many people who go on to take their lives do seem to be in an optimistic mood days before they commit the act, because they know they are going to put an end to it all soon. What we do know for certain is that Pier Angeli's life was a heartbreaking saga, even by the ruthless standards of Hollywood. Glamorous facade could not hide the turmoil she faced, and her untimely death only adds another layer to the tragic tale of a star who seemed to have it all but ultimately lost everything. And I do want to talk about the aging in Hollywood, the fear of it. The golden age of Hollywood, spanning from the 1920s to the early 1960s, was a time of glamour, glitz, and unprecedented fame for many actresses. However, beneath the sparkling surface of this cinematic utopia lay the dark truth, the relentless fear of aging that plagued women in the industry. As the years rolled on, the pressure to maintain youthfulness became a consuming obsession, leading many talented women to drastic measures in their quest to defy the inevitable passage of time. In an industry built on appearances, women were held to impossibly high standards of beauty. The ideal image was that of eternal youth, characterized by flawless skin, a slim figure, and alluring smile. Actresses were often seen as commodities, valued not for their talent, but for their marketability. Youth was their currency. As a result, the aging process became a big threat to their careers. These stars resorted to extreme measures to preserve their looks, including strict diets, rigorous exercise regimens, and a variety of cosmetic procedures. Some even turned to more drastic solutions, such as surgeries that promised to turn back the clock. The pursuit of youth was not just a personal choice, it was a necessity dictated by the industry's unyielding standards. And for many, like Rita Hayworth, which I did a video for also, surgery was not their personal choice, but it was in their contracts by the studios. It was a necessity for the studios. It was if you don't do it, we're terminating your contract. We need you to take these speech classes. We need you to take these etiquette classes, to do these surgeries on your face. We need you to lose 20 pounds. We need you to shave off this or dye your hair this color, wear these type of clothes. It was very difficult during those times and even today, because the image they give you is the image you're supposed to have. They had no freedom in that to be like they had a choice. And once you were in a contract, it was legally binding. You could not just get out of a contract like that without owing the studios a large sum of money or having the mafia, because the studios employed the mafia and mobsters to go after these stars. Also, I did a video on Hollywood fixers and mob men that would threaten and intimidate the stars to get their way from the studios to get their way. I'll pin that in the end cards also to check that out. It's not like some people will say, why couldn't they just get out? Why couldn't you just exit? It was a choice. It was this. Well, no. Once you're in a contract, because a lot of them, remember, it's called the golden age of Hollywood, because Hollywood was still a new concept. It's not like what we know today. We know all the scandals. If you still choose to get in bed with Hollywood, now you know what to expect. But then they didn't know what to expect. It was new. They didn't know about any scandals. Plus, they did a great job of covering scandals, Hollywood, with the media. They had the media in their pockets. So a lot of these stars didn't know what to expect. Hollywood was still a very new thing, a new concept for them, that they got into these contracts literally blind, and especially the child stars. They got into it, even the parents not really knowing. And they all found out later that, oh, this is not what it's all cracked up to be. And it was just a whole bunch of men, literally, in the industry that got too much money, too much power. These men never got girls growing up. They never had, what do the young people say, Riz? And now they have all this money and power and all these beautiful women that want to be on people's screens, that you have access to these beautiful women and control and power. You want to exert that power because you never had that kind of access to beautiful women before. And a lot of them became brutal and evil and mean. And now, because they were bullied or not chosen by these women, they now go on to want to punish beautiful women that had nothing to do with their childhoods. And these women would be so young too, like 16, 15, no, nothing. They do not care. That was the industry then. And while women faced intense scrutiny and pressure to maintain their youthful looks, men in the industry experienced a different reality. Male actors such as Cary Grant and Humphrey Bogart, I did a video for him, often matured gracefully, gaining respect and accolades as they age. The Hollywood narrative allowed men to transition into roles that showcased their experience and wisdom, while women were frequently pushed aside as they reached their 30s and 40s. This gender disparity manifested itself in casting decisions, while older male actors continuing to land leading roles alongside much younger women. In contrast, aging actresses were often relegated to supporting roles, character parts, or left to fade into obscurity or be the grandma, the mother, The industry's sexism was glaringly evident, and the emotional toll it took on women was profound. The pressure to remain youthful and relevant took a devastating toll on many actresses, leading some to take their own lives in despair. Pier Angeli became emblematic of this tragic phenomenon. Despite her beauty and talent, she was haunted by the fear of aging and the relentless scrutiny of the media. Angeli's struggles with love, marriage, and motherhood were fueled by her anxiety about turning 40. When she tragically died at the age of 39, speculations arose that she had intentionally overdosed on medication, a decision driven by the overwhelming fear of entering a new decade. Angeli's story is just one of many, as numerous actresses found themselves trapped in a cycle of despair and self-loathing as they confronted the harsh realities of aging in Hollywood. Another poignant example is that of Marilyn Monroe, which I did a video for also, whose life was a whirlwind of fame, fortune, and ultimately despair. Known for her youthful allure, Monroe Monroe faced immense pressure to retain her image as a quintessential sex symbol. As she began to age, she struggled with her sense of identity and worth in an industry that valued her primarily for her looks. Her tragic death in 1962 shocked the world and served as a grim reminder of the high stakes involved in the pursuit of beauty and acceptance. During the golden age of Hollywood, the methods women employed to slow down aging were often extreme and dangerous. From the use of toxic substances to maintain a slim figure to the widespread adoption of cosmetic surgery, actresses were willing to go to great lengths for the sake of their careers. Some engaged in secretive beauty treatments, such as the use of mercury-laden creams or illegal injections, which were touted as miracle solutions but often led to devastating health consequences, much like everyone using Ozempic right now, right? The horror of aging in Hollywood, particularly for women during the golden age, presents a deep commentary on societal values in the entertainment industry. The relentless pursuit of youth led to tragic outcomes for many talented women who found themselves at the mercy of a system that valued their looks over their capabilities. As we reflect on this dark chapter in Hollywood history, it becomes clear that the fear of aging is a lingering issue that continues to affect women in the industry even today. While there have been strides towards greater acceptance of aging and diversity in Hollywood, the scars of the past still resonate. The stories of Pier Angeli, Marilyn Monroe, and countless others serve as a sobering reminder of the cost of beauty in a world obsessed with youth. And many people don't talk about these stories. When you talk about the stars, they just talk about the fashion, the hair, the makeup, the beauty. Oh, what a glamorous time. But people don't see the dark underbelly of what these women had to go through, and even some of these men, because James Dean, he went through it too. We're just talking about him, right? He went through it in the industry and had an untimely death. So even the men were not safe from these powerful figureheads that would even sleep with the men that weren't gay, but forced them to, hey, bend over, do what you got to do if you want this role. You're already in a contract. Or you trying to get out? You think you can just get out of this contract? Let me send a mobster to your home to pull one on you, and threaten you to do what we want. So these people sometimes just opted to die. And that's why some of them would just come up missing or dead, because they would just opt to die, but some were not strong enough to opt out, for death, And I say strong because you really got to be strong to just be like, I'd rather die than to sell my soul like this. But not everybody has that kind of strength. And this is why oftentimes I'm very sympathetic towards a lot of these stars, specifically the golden age of Hollywood ones, because they really don't know. And even the ones of, the 90s and the 80s, 90s and all of that, I'm sympathetic with them because they grew up as children seeing Hollywood as glamorized, not knowing the real stories, not because of social media and, YouTube, and because YouTube is like almost independent media. Like you have a channel like myself that can really tell you the stories that really happen instead of the glamorized version the media will tell you. Now people know what Hollywood really is, and people are getting tired and they're annoyed and they're not falling for all the fake. But before, even me growing up in the early 2000s, I wanted to be a Disney Channel star. I wanted to be the next Raven Simone. I wanted to be a cheetah girl, etc. Right? So I didn't know. It just looked glamorous. We didn't know. We did not know until you get older. So they grow up going into the industry not knowing half of these things. So this is why I'm always sympathetic and understand that not everyone knows what they're signing up for. So let's be kind. And once they know, oftentimes to them in their mind, it's too late. I'm already trapped. And we don't even know the half of these people's stories and what they endured, who they had to sleep with to get to the top, or what devious things they had to do, and they did it all. And it's unfortunate the way that Pier Angeli was gone too soon, but may she rest in peace. Her sister, Marissa, did go on to live a pretty peaceful life. She lived on until the age of, I believe, 91 or 92. They'll quote me, but she lived into her 90s and was married, had her children, lived a more peaceful life because she was more low-key, though she had a successful career herself. But because her mom wasn't as focused on her and stuff, she had a little bit more freedom and a more opportunity to not be in the spotlight like that. So it shows that the more fame you have in Hollywood, the more tragic your life tends to be, the more stress, the more anxiety, the more people want to control you, the more hands in the pot. So when you see a really, really successful person, don't just automatically throw hate. You really do not know what that person is going through behind the scenes. No one knew what Pier Angeli was going through behind the scenes until after she died. You really do not know. And I say this even for our modern stars. There's a lot of them that get a lot of hate, and you really don't know. Even on a Christian perspective, pray for people, because you really don't know the demons they have been trapped with in this industry either. So lead with compassion, lead with love. Comment below who else you guys would like to get a video for. Leave some flower emojis in the comments for Pier Angeli. Give her flowers. And if you like the music you're listening to, the link is in the description. I love you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one. Until next time.